Midnight, Miss Celia Thornwick was sold without anyone saying the word sold. That was how respectable people did wicked things. They did not drag a woman onto a block and name a price. They invited guests to a private gathering, poured Madeira into crystal glasses, laughed beneath chandeliers, and called it a settlement of guardianship. The old assembly room at Greycombe House glittered with warmth, but every corner of it felt cold to Celia. 27 candles burned in the wall sconces. A string quartet played near the curtained windows. Gentlemen stood with their backs to the fire, pretending not to measure her. Ladies watched behind fans, pretending pity was not entertainment. At the centre of the room, on a small velvet-covered table, sat the object that had ruined Celia's life, a music box. It was made of dark walnut, inlaid with mother of pearl, and crowned with a tiny silver swan. When wound, the lid opened, and a small painted dancer turned slowly to a tune Celia had known since childhood. Her mother's tune, the last thing Lady Thornwick had touched before she died. Celia had come to Greycombe House to recover it. Instead, she had walked into a trap. Her guardian, Sir Malvern Pike, stood near the velvet table, smiling like a man who had eaten well before sentencing someone else to starvation. He was stout, polished, perfumed, and dangerous in the way weak men become dangerous when given power over those with less. "My dear Celia," he said, lifting his glass, "you must understand. A young lady in your situation requires protection. My situation," Celia replied, "was created by you." Several guests looked away. Sir Malvern's smile did not move. "Grief has made you dramatic. No, grief made me quiet. You mistook that for permission." That silenced two women near the fireplace. Sir Malvern's fingers tightened around his glass. Beside him stood Lord Ambrose Kelling, the man Celia was meant to marry by morning. He was elegant, pale, and handsome in a way that seemed unfinished, as though nature had carved the face and forgotten to put a soul behind it. He had debts. Everyone knew it. He had charm. Everyone knew that too. And now, apparently, he was to have Celia's inheritance. The arrangement was simple. If Celia married before her 21st birthday, control of her mother's estate passed to her husband for 5 years. Her birthday was at dawn. By sunrise, she would control herself. By midnight, men had gathered to prevent it. Sir Malvern placed one hand on the music box. "Lord Kelling has generously agreed to marry you tonight by special license. The clergyman is waiting in the East Chapel." Celia stared at him. "You cannot force me." "Force?" Sir Malvern looked wounded. "What a terrible word. Everyone here has heard you agree." "I agreed to attend supper. A nervous bride often forgets what she has agreed to." Celia turned to the room. "Did I agree to marry him?" No one answered. No one wanted truth badly enough to spend social capital on it. Lord Kelling stepped forward, smiling gently. "Celia, do not make this uglier than necessary. It became ugly when you came dressed for a wedding I never accepted." His smile thinned. "You will thank me later." "For what?" "For saving you from becoming a woman with property and no man to guide it." Celia almost laughed. Then Sir Malvern lifted the music box. "This will be returned to you after the ceremony." Celia's breath stopped. "You have no right to touch that. Your mother's possessions remain under guardianship until the estate is settled. That box is mine. Then marry and reclaim it." The room watched. That was the true cruelty. Not the threat, the audience. Celia understood then that they had not gathered merely to witness a marriage. They had gathered to witness her resistance become useless. She looked toward the doors. 2 footmen stood there. Not guards. Footmen. Again, respectable wickedness. It's no locked cell, no chains. Only men in livery, waiting to prevent a woman from leaving her own life. Sir Malvern gestured toward the chapel corridor. "Come, dear girl, it is late." Celia took one step back. Lord Kelling's eyes sharpened. "Do not embarrass yourself." But Celia had already seen her chance. The west doors opened for a late arrival, only for a moment. A man entered from the rain. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a dark travelling coat without ornament. No one announced him, no one rushed to greet him. His hair was damp, his gloves were muddy, and his expression suggested he had not come for music, wine, or polite cruelty. Celia did not know him, but she saw the way Sir Malvern stiffened. She saw Lord Kelling's face lose colour. She saw two elderly gentlemen near the hearth suddenly lower their eyes. Whoever the stranger was, he frightened guilty men. That was enough. Celia moved before courage had time to change its mind. She crossed the assembly room, ignoring Sir Malvern's sharp call behind her. "Celia." She reached the stranger at the threshold. He looked down at her with dark, unreadable eyes. "Sir," she whispered, "please be my false husband." The words were mad. She knew it as soon as they left her mouth. But madness had arrived before her and taken a seat beside the fire. The stranger did not blink. That is a dangerous request to make of a man you have not met. "I know. Are you fleeing someone?" "I am being married to someone." "Against your will?" "Yes." His gaze moved over her shoulder. "To Kelling?" "Yes, and Pike, my guardian, of course." The way he said it made Celia's pulse jump. "You know them. I know what they owe." Before she could ask what that meant, Sir Malvern reached them. "My apologies," he said smoothly. "My ward is overwrought." The stranger looked at him. "Women are often called overwrought when men are afraid they have been understood." Sir Malvern's smile faltered. Lord Kelling joined them, his voice lower. "You should not involve yourself." The stranger's gaze shifted to him. "You should not be here." Kelling flushed. "This is a private family matter." "No," Celia said. "It is a public robbery wearing a wedding coat." The stranger looked at her then. Something changed. Not amusement. Respect, perhaps. Small but real. Sir Malvern's voice hardened. Celia returned to the chapel corridor. She took the stranger's arm. Every guest in the room inhaled at once. "I cannot," she said. Sir Malvern stared at her hand on the stranger's sleeve. "You go too far." "No," Celia replied. "For the first time tonight, I am moving in the correct direction." The stranger leaned slightly toward her. "Do you understand what you are doing?" "No." "At least you are honest. That is more than can be said for anyone else in this room." His mouth almost moved, almost a smile. Then Sir Malvern raised his voice. "Gentlemen, this is absurd. Miss Thornwick is promised to Lord Kelling. Her guardian has arranged the match. A clergyman waits. No stranger can overturn lawful authority because a frightened girl clings to his sleeve." The stranger's voice was calm. "Then it is fortunate I am not a stranger." A silence dropped across the room. Sir Malvern went pale. Celia looked up at him. "What does that mean?" He did not answer her. He looked at Sir Malvern. "Show me the licence." Lord Kelling stepped back. "No." The stranger's eyes sharpened. "No." Sir Malvern forced a laugh. "This is outrageous. Show me the licence. It is with the clergyman. Send for it." Sir Malvern hesitated. Celia felt the stranger's arm become still beneath her hand. He knew something, or suspected something. Lord Kelling tried to recover. "You have no authority here." The stranger removed one glove slowly. On his right hand was a signet ring. Black stone. Silver crest. A lion holding a key. Every older person in the room recognized it before Celia did. One woman whispered, "Ravenscar." Lord Kelling looked as though he might be ill. The stranger turned his head slightly. I have enough authority. Celia's heart struck hard. Ravenscar, Duke of Ravenscar. She had heard the name only in warnings. He was the crown's private enforcer in matters no court wished to touch, publicly. A duke who rarely appeared in society, who could freeze accounts, seize estates, and drag titled men into proceedings behind closed doors. And she had just asked him to be her false husband. Sir Malvern bowed stiffly. Your Grace, Celia's hand nearly fell from his arm. The Duke covered it lightly with his own, keeping it in place. The gesture looked intimate, protective, possessive even. But his voice, when he spoke to her, was quiet enough only she could hear. Do not let go yet. Celia swallowed. Why? Because they fear what it looks like. To whom? To everyone they need as witnesses. Sir Malvern's composure returned in fragments. Your Grace, there has been a misunderstanding. Miss Thornwick is emotional. Lord Kelling is prepared to offer her a respectable future. The Duke looked at Lord Kelling's waistcoat, boots, cufflinks, and face. On borrowed money. Kelling's jaw tightened. Sir Malvern said quickly, The marriage benefits both families. Her mother's estate benefits yours. That is offensive. Then deny it under oath. Sir Malvern said nothing. The Duke turned to Celia. Why tonight? My birthday is at dawn. The room shifted. A few guests looked suddenly less comfortable. And at dawn? He asked. I inherit directly.
And if you marry before dawn?
My husband controls the estate for 5 years. The Duke nodded slowly. Efficient. Celia's voice trembled. Cruel. Efficiency often is. He looked toward the velvet table. The music box still sat there. What is that? Celia stiffened. Mine! Sir Malvern moved slightly, as if to block his view. The Duke noticed. Bring it here. Sir Malvern laughed. Surely, Your Grace, bring it here. No one moved. Then, very quietly, the Duke said, Captain. The room turned. A man in plain brown livery near the door stepped forward. Celia had thought him a servant. He was not. He carried himself like a soldier. Sir Malvern saw it too. The captain crossed to the table and picked up the music box. Sir Malvern reached for it. The captain looked at him once. Sir Malvern withdrew his hand. The box was placed before the Duke. Celia stared at it. Her mother's swan. Her childhood tune, the one thing they had used to pull her into the trap. The Duke looked at her. May I? She nodded. He wound the key. The lid opened. The painted dancer rose. The tune began. Soft, sweet, wrong. Celia's breath caught. The melody had changed, only slightly, but she knew it at once. That is not the tune. The Duke looked at her sharply. What? My mother's song. It is wrong. The dancer turned once, twice, then stopped. Not at the end of the melody, halfway. A small click sounded inside the box. The silver swan on top shifted. Its wings opened. The room went still. Inside the swan's hollow body sat a tiny brass seal. Not a letter, not a note. A seal. Celia stared. The Duke removed it carefully. His expression darkened. What is it? She whispered. He turned the seal toward the candlelight. It bore the crest of a crown split by a thorn. Sir Malvern made a sound low in his throat. The Duke heard. So, Ravenscar said softly. Lady Thornwick hid it in the music box. Sir Malvern stepped backward. Lord Kelling whispered, Malvern! Celia's heart pounded. My mother hid what? The Duke looked at her. The thing men have killed for. Before she could answer, the chapel bell rang once. Then again. Midnight had passed. The clergyman was waiting. The guests were trapped between scandal and revelation, and Sir Malvern Pike suddenly shouted, Take the box! The candles went out, all at once. The assembly room plunged into darkness. Celia felt a hand seize her wrist. Not the Duke's, someone else, she screamed. The Duke's arm came around her, pulling her back as glass shattered. Women cried out, men cursed, and someone ran toward the music box. In the darkness, Lord Kelling's voice hissed near her ear. You should have married me when it was still only about money. Then pain flashed at her temple. The room spun. The last thing Celia heard before falling was the Duke's voice, cold and furious, cutting through the chaos. Seal the house. No one leaves before dawn. Celia woke in a room she did not know. For one terrifying moment, she thought she had been taken to the chapel. Then she saw the fire, the carved bedposts, the high windows dark with rain, the velvet curtains. Not a chapel, a bedchamber. She sat up too quickly, and pain split behind her eyes. A woman in grey turned from the washstand. Careful, miss. Celia touched her temple. A bandage had been wrapped around her brow. Where am I? Still at Greycombe House, West Guest Chamber. Who are you? His Grace's housekeeper when he travels. Celia stared. The Duke travels with a housekeeper. Mrs. Anlow gave her a dry look. The Duke travels with problems. I follow because problems bleed, faint, lie, or set curtains on fire. Celia almost smiled. Then memory returned. The room, the music box, the seal, Lord Kelling's whisper. She threw back the covers, the box. Mrs. Anlow blocked her gently. Safe. The seal? Safe. The Duke? Angry. That does not answer me. It answers most questions about him. The door opened. The Duke of Ravenscar entered. He had changed from his rain-dark coat into formal black evening dress. But a cut marked one cheek, and there was blood on his cuff. Not much. Enough. Celia stood unsteadily. Your Grace, he stopped. You should be lying down. I have done enough lying helplessly tonight, Mrs. Anlow made a sound that might have been approval. The Duke glanced at her. She curtsied and left. Celia gripped the bedpost. What happened? The candles were extinguished by men stationed in the gallery. Kelling attempted to remove you. Pike attempted to remove the music box. My men stopped both. Where are they? Under guard. And the guests? Locked in the assembly room with food, wine, and their own consciences. I expect the food to fare better. Despite everything, Celia let out a breath that almost became laughter. The Duke's face remained serious. Kelling struck you. Yes. His jaw tightened. He will answer for that. Celia looked at him carefully. Why are you here? In the room? In my life. He did not answer at once. The fire shifted behind him. Then he said, because your mother asked me to be. Celia went still. My mother died 9 years ago. Yes. You knew her. Yes. The answer was too simple, too heavy. Celia lowered herself onto the edge of the bed. Tell me. The Duke reached into his coat and removed the tiny brass seal from the music box. He placed it on the table between them. This is the Thorn Crown Seal. It belonged to a private crown trust created 40 years ago to protect estates belonging to women and children whose guardians might exploit them. Celia stared. I have never heard of it. You were not meant to. It operated outside ordinary inheritance courts. That sounds illegal. It was created because ordinary courts were often too slow to protect women from legal robbery. She looked at him. And my mother had it. Your mother was one of its final trustees. Celia's memories shifted. Her mother writing late at night. Men calling at the back entrance. The music box playing in the study when she thought Celia was asleep. She was not only managing our estate, Celia whispered. No, what was she doing? Protecting others. Celia swallowed. From men like Sir Malvern. Yes, And Lord Kelling, Kelling's father, then Kelling. The Duke leaned closer to the seal. 9 years ago, your mother discovered that several protected estates had been redirected through false guardianships. She hid the master seal before she died. Without it, the trust could not fully act. Men like Pike survived in the gap. Celia's eyes burned. My mother's death was sudden. Yes. Was it natural? The Duke did not lie quickly. That hurt more than any answer. I do not know. Celia looked away. The room seemed to tilt around her. All her life, her mother had been reduced to gentleness. A soft voice, a warm hand, a music box tune. But now she had edges, courage, enemies. A secret powerful enough to bring a duke into a midnight trap. Why did you not come sooner? Celia asked. I searched. Your mother hid the seal too well. In my music box. Yes, you knew it might be there. I suspected, and Sir Malvern. He suspected too. Celia touched the bandage at her temple. That is why he used it to force me to the chapel. He thought, if I became Lord Kelling's wife, he could take everything before anyone opened it. The Duke's silence confirmed it. A terrible thought entered her mind. Your Grace, when I asked you to be my false husband, his expression changed slightly. Yes. Why did everyone become so afraid? Because the law recognizes public claim. I do not understand. If a man of rank publicly claims protection over a woman being coerced into marriage, the ceremony must pause pending inquiry. So you pretended? No. Celia frowned. Your Grace, the Duke's eyes held hers. There is nothing false about it. The words struck her. Not softly, not romantically, like a door opening beneath her feet. She stood. What does that mean? He did not move. It means you may already be my wife. For several seconds, Celia could not understand the words. Then she laughed once, sharply. That is not amusing. I am not attempting humour. I cannot already be your wife. You may be. I would remember. Not if you were 3 years old. Celia stared at him. The fire cracked loudly behind them. The Duke reached into his coat again, but not for a letter. He removed a small painted miniature, a little girl in a blue dress, a woman holding her, and a man standing beside them in profile. The man was younger than the Duke, but unmistakably him. Celia took the miniature with numb fingers. That is me. Yes. That is my mother. Yes. And that is you. Yes. Her voice dropped. Why are we painted together? The Duke looked toward the fire. Because your mother arranged a legal ward marriage contract between you and the Ravenscar line when your father died. Celia felt cold. A what? Not a marriage in the ordinary sense. An old protective arrangement. Rare. Nearly obsolete. It bound your estate temporarily to mine, so that no guardian could dispose of you or your inheritance without my consent. But Sir Malvern became my guardian. Because the record vanished. The record? The ceremonial proof was not written on paper. It was kept in paired objects. Your mother distrusted documents. Mine did too. Celia looked again at the miniature. The painting, one part, and the other. The Duke reached into his waistcoat and removed a ring, not the signet he wore, a smaller ring. Gold, set with a blue stone shaped like a tear. Celia remembered it, not from life, from dreams. A warm hand placing it around her thumb while adults spoke above her. She sank slowly onto the bed. I thought that was a dream. It was a ceremony. Then, why did you not come for me? The question came out sharper than she intended. The Duke accepted it. Because I was told you died of fever the year after your mother. Celia's mouth went dry. What? Pike sent notice through legal channels. A child named Celia Thornwick was recorded dead and buried at St. Ormond. I was in Bath with my aunt that winter. Yes. He looked at the miniature. When I discovered the burial record might be false, Pike had already taken guardianship. By then, exposing the matter without the seal or paired proof could have allowed him to declare you illegitimate, unstable, or part of a fraud. Celia whispered. So you waited. I watched. From where? From farther than I liked. A memory stirred. A school bill paid anonymously. A doctor arriving when her aunt could not afford one. A maid who warned her not to trust Sir Malvin's solicitor. Celia looked up. That was you? Yes. Anger and gratitude collided so violently she could barely breathe. You protected me invisibly, while I was trapped visibly. Pain crossed his face. Yes. Do you expect thanks? No. Good. He bowed his head. For the first time, he looked less like a duke and more like a man standing posting before a judgment he could not command. A knock struck the door. Mrs. Anlow entered without waiting. Your Grace, Pike, is awakened demanding a magistrate. Kelling is laughing. That usually means stupidity has found courage. The Duke turned. Where is the music box? In the blue parlour. Bring it. Celia stood. I am coming. No. Yes. The Duke looked at her. You were injured. I was nearly married against my will, possibly married without memory. Told my mother. Led a secret trust. Discovered I was once declared dead and woke in a stranger's bedchamber. A headache is not the most alarming part of my evening. Mrs. Anlow coughed. The Duke looked at the ceiling briefly, as if asking patience from God and receiving none. Very well, they went downstairs. Greycombe House felt transformed. The pretty midnight gathering had become a siege. Men guarded doors. Guests whispered angrily behind closed panels. Servants hurried with wide eyes. In the blue parlour, Sir Malvin sat tied to a chair, flushed with fury. Lord Kelling lounged near the window under guard, one cheek bruised. Still beautiful, still poisonous. On the table sat the music box. The Duke placed the miniature beside it. Then the ring. Then the brass seal. Kelling smiled. How touching. Toys. The Duke looked at him. Objects outlive liars. Sir Malvin spat. None of this proves anything. Celia stepped forward. What did you think was inside the box? Sir Malvin said nothing. The Duke wound the music box again. The wrong tune played. The dancer turned. Stopped. The swan opened this time. The Duke pressed the brass seal into the hollowed neath the swan. A mechanism clicked. The bottom of the music box opened. Not a drawer. A hidden rotating plate. Inside it sat 6 tiny ivory tiles, each engraved with a woman's name. Celia recognised one at once. Her mother, Marianne Thornwick. The Duke removed another tile. Agnes Vale. Mrs. Anlow inhaled sharply. Her estate vanished. Another. Louisa Fern. The Duke's face darkened, declared mad by her guardian. Another. Celia Thornwick. Celia's stomach dropped. Her own name, engraved years earlier. The Duke turned the tile over. On the back was a date, the day after her supposed death. He looked at Sir Malvin. You did not merely steal from wards. Sir Malvin's face had gone grey. You marked them for removal. Kelling stopped smiling. Celia looked at the tile in horror. What does removal mean? The Duke's voice was cold. It means your name was added to a list of women whose legal existence had to be altered so men could reach their property. Celia gripped the table. Sir Malvin whispered, You cannot prove I made those tiles. The music box gave one final click. A second compartment opened. Inside was not paper, not a letter, a tiny wax cylinder, the kind used in experimental voice machines, rare and expensive. Celia stared. The Duke went completely still. Mrs. Anlow whispered. Good God. Celia looked between them. "What is it?" the Duke answered quietly. "Your mother's voice." Sir Malvern lunged against his bonds. "No!" The Duke picked up the cylinder. Lord Kelling stood suddenly. The guards moved. But before anyone could stop him, Kelling shouted, "If you play that, she dies before sunrise." The room froze. Celia's blood turned cold. The Duke turned slowly. "Who?" Kelling smiled, breathless and triumphant. "The last woman on the list." Celia looked down at the ivory tiles. There had been 6, but the compartment had space for 7. One tile was missing. Somewhere another woman was about to vanish. And if they chose wrong before dawn, Celia survived only to watch someone else be destroyed by the same machine built to save them. The wax cylinder sat on the table like a sleeping witness. No one touched it. No one breathed easily near it. Sir Malvern Pike had stopped shouting. Lord Kelling had stopped smiling. Even the guards seemed to understand that the room had shifted from scandal to something sharper. A living woman was in danger, and the only clue might be trapped inside the dead woman's voice. The Duke looked at Lord Kelling. "Name her." Kelling leaned back, enjoying himself again. "I think not." Ravenscar stepped closer. "You are under guard in a locked house, and yet I know something you do not. Temporarily." Kelling's smile flickered. Celia stared at the empty space inside the music box, where the 7th ivory tile should have been. The last woman on the list. Someone like her. Someone trapped by a guardian, an uncle, a husband, a creditor, a man with polished boots and legal language. Celia turned to the Duke. "Play it." Sir Malvern made a strangled sound. "No." Kelling's eyes sharpened. "Dangerous choice." Celia looked at him. "No." The dangerous choice was trusting men who profit from silence. The Duke's gaze rested on her for one brief second. Then he nodded to Mrs. Anlow. "Bring the apparatus." Within minutes, Mrs. Anlow returned with a small velvet-covered case. Inside was a strange brass device with a horn, a crank, and a delicate needle. Celia had heard of such things in scientific journals. Machines that could catch sound. Machines that could make a dead voice speak. The cylinder was fitted into place. The Duke's hand rested on the crank. He looked at Celia. "She may say things you are not prepared to hear. She already lived things I was not prepared to know." He turned the crank. At first, only static. A scratching whisper. Then a woman's voice emerged from the horn. Thin, distant, but unmistakably alive inside the sound. Celia's knees weakened. Her mother. "If this is heard, then the seal has been found, and I am likely gone." Celia covered her mouth. The Duke closed his eyes briefly. The voice continued. "The trust has been betrayed from within. Pike is not alone. Kelling's line purchases debts. Harrow's clerks alter deaths. The chapel books lie. The music must be played only when the living tile is missing the living tile." Celia looked at the empty space. Her mother's voice crackled. "The last protected name is not engraved. She must not be named until danger comes, for naming her is how they find her. She is hidden under the swan rule." The cylinder hissed. Then the voice changed, lower now, urgent. "If my daughter lives, tell her this. No guardian owns what God made free. No husband owns what fear obtained. No court should bless a cage because it has a signature." Celia began to cry silently. Not loudly, not beautifully. The tears came because the mother she had mourned as gentle had returned as fire. The voice continued. "The swan rule opens only with 3 proofs. The seal, the paired bond, and the spoken refusal of the woman being coerced." Celia whispered. "The paired bond." The Duke placed the miniature and ring beside the seal. The voice crackled again. "The Duke of Ravenscar will know what must be done. If he fails, trust Mrs. Anlow. She has always been braver than he is. Mrs. Anlow wiped at one eye and muttered, "That woman never could resist accuracy." Despite herself, Celia laughed through tears. Then the cylinder gave its final line. "The missing tile belongs to the woman brought to marry after my daughter. Save her before dawn." The machine clicked. The voice died. The room remained silent. Then Celia turned toward Lord Kelling. "The woman brought to marry after me." His face was expressionless. The Duke understood first. The clergyman. Celia's breath caught. The East Chapel. The special license. The waiting ceremony. If Celia escaped, another woman was ready to be placed in the same trap before dawn. Mrs. Answer whispered, "A substitute bride." Kelling clapped slowly. "Very good." The Duke seized him by the throat and drove him against the wall. "Who is she?" Kelling choked, then laughed. "You cannot be everywhere, Ravenscar." "No," Celia said suddenly. Everyone turned. She looked at the music box. At Greycombe House, they needed witnesses for my ceremony. Guests, a clergyman, a guardian. But for a substitute, they would need someone already here. The Duke released Kelling. Celia looked toward the locked assembly room. "Someone among the guests," Mrs. Anlow said. "There are 42 women in that room." "Not all vulnerable," Celia said. "Not all under guardianship. Not all close to inheritance before dawn." The Duke looked at her. "How do you know? Because men like Pike choose where law becomes convenient." She turned to Sir Malvern. "You invited her yourself, did you not?" Sir Malvern stared at the floor. "Who came tonight without family?" Celia asked. Mrs. Anlow thought quickly. "Miss Elspeth Marrow, young, quiet, came with Lady Dane." The Duke shook his head. "Her father is alive." "Miss Viola Chaston," said the captain. "Widowed, estate tied in chancery." "No guardian," Celia said. Then she remembered. A girl near the fireplace, pale, silent, wearing a grey dress 2 seasons out of fashion, not speaking because no one spoke to her. Miss Rosalie Fenn. Mrs. Anlow's face changed. Her uncle brought her, Mr. Harrowby. The Duke's eyes sharpened. Harrowby, one of the clerks named in the cylinder. Celia's blood chilled. There, it is her. Kelling smiled. "Perhaps, perhaps not. By the time you search politely, the chapel vows will be done." The Duke turned to the captain. "Secure the East Chapel." The captain left at once with 2 guards. Celia followed. The Duke caught her arm. "You stay here. No, this is not debate. You heard my mother. The Swan rule requires the spoken refusal of the woman being coerced. If Miss Fenn is too frightened to speak, I may be the only person who can make her understand she has the right." The Duke stared at her. For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then he released her. "Stay behind me. Your Grace, I have spent my life behind men who made choices for me." His expression shifted. "Then stay where I can reach you." "That was different." She nodded. They ran through Greycombe House. The corridors seemed endless. Guests shouted from locked rooms. Servants pressed themselves against walls. Somewhere outside, rain lashed the windows. Dawn was still hours away, but Celia felt time tightening around them. They reached the East Chapel. The doors were open. The captain stood inside, furious. "No one here, Your Grace." Celia's heart dropped. The altar candles burned. The clergyman was gone. On the floor lay a torn grey ribbon. Rosalie's. Celia picked it up. They moved her. The Duke looked around. Where would they perform a private marriage without the chapel? Celia thought of Sir Malvern, respectable wickedness. It always needed a room that could pretend to be innocent. "The portrait gallery," she said. "Why?" "Because it has the estate witnesses painted on the walls." Pike made a joke once that dead ancestors were better witnesses than living cowards. The Duke was already moving. They reached the portrait gallery just as the first vow was being spoken. Rosalie Fenn stood beneath a wall of dead aristocrats, trembling in a grey gown. Beside her stood Mr. Harrowby, her uncle, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. A young clergyman, pale with fear, held his prayer book. Opposite Rosalie stood a man Celia did not know. Older, hard-faced, dressed in wedding black. Celia understood at once, not Lord Kelling, a buyer. A man prepared to marry whichever heiress was most convenient. The clergyman stammered, "Wilt thou have this man?" "No," Celia said. Everyone turned. Rosalie's eyes widened. Mr. Harrowby hissed, "Remove her." The Duke entered behind Celia. No one moved after that. Ravenscar's voice filled the gallery. "Step away from the girl." The older groom backed up. Mr. Harrowby tightened his grip on Rosalie. "She is my ward." Celia walked forward slowly. So was I. Rosalie stared at her. Celia held out the grey ribbon. "You do not have to marry him." Rosalie's lips trembled. Mr. Harrowby snapped. "She consents." Celia looked only at Rosalie. "Do you?" The girl could not speak. Her whole body shook. Celia remembered herself in the assembly room. Surrounded. Measured. Expected to surrender because everyone else had already decided. She stepped closer. "Listen to me. Your fear is not consent. Your silence is not consent. Their hurry is not law. Say one word and this ends." Rosalie's uncle snarled, "You ruined yourself tonight. Do not ruin her too." The Duke's voice was quiet. "Touch Miss Thornwick with one more word and you will regret having a tongue." Harrowby went pale. Celia kept her hand extended. "Rosalie." The girl looked at the old groom, then at her uncle, then at Celia and whispered, "No." The word was tiny, but the gallery heard it. The Duke stepped forward. Louder. Rosalie drew a shaking breath. "No." The candles flickered. The old groom cursed under his breath. Mr. Harrowby released her as if she had burned him. The Duke turned to the clergyman. "Did you hear refusal?" The man nodded quickly. "Yes, Your Grace. Then any ceremony after this is coercion." Rosalie stumbled forward. Celia caught her. For a moment, the two women held each other like survivors of the same wreck. Then shouting rose behind them. Lord Kelling had escaped the blue parlour. He appeared at the far end of the gallery with Sir Malvern's stolen pistol in one hand and the music box in the other. The Duke went still. Kelling smiled wildly. "I warned you." He lifted the music box. Celia's stomach turned. The seal was still inside, the wax cylinder, the tiles. Her mother's voice. Everything. Kelling backed toward the balcony doors. "Let me leave or I destroy it." The Duke's voice was cold. "You will not reach the gates. I do not need the gates." He nodded toward the balcony. Below it ran the river, swollen with rain. One throw, and the box would vanish. Celia stepped forward. "Lord Kelling!" The Duke said, "Celia, no." Kelling pointed the pistol at her. "That is close enough." Celia stopped. Her eyes remained on the music box. "You think that box is what matters. It is evidence." "No, it is bait. It has always been bait." Kelling frowned. Celia remembered her mother's tune. The wrong melody. The swan. The hidden mechanism. Her mother had never trusted one hiding place. "My mother would not leave everything in one box." Kelling's eyes flickered. Celia looked at the Duke, the dancer. He understood. The painted dancer inside the music box had stopped halfway because the melody was wrong, not malfunction. Direction. Celia spoke slowly. "The dancer points." Kelling looked down despite himself. That was all the Duke needed. He moved. The pistol fired, cracking a portrait frame above them. Kelling cried out as the Duke struck his wrist. The music box flew from his hands. Celia lunged and caught it against her chest before it hit the floor. The Duke slammed Kelling against the wall. Guards rushed in. It was over. Almost. Celia opened the box with shaking hands. The dancer stood frozen, one arm lifted, pointing not at the swan, not at the seal, toward the painted base beneath her feet. Celia pressed it. A final compartment opened. Inside was a tiny mirror. Nothing else. Rosalie whispered, "A mirror!" Celia stared into it, then gasped. The mirror reflected the underside of the lid. Words had been engraved there so faintly they could only be read in reflection. Not a letter, not paper. A hidden inscription carved into the box itself. The trust does not live in the seal. It lives in the women who refuse. Beneath the words were 7 names. Marianne Thornwick, Agnes Louisa Fern, Celia Thornwick, Rosalie Fenn, and 2 others Celia did not know. The Duke looked at the names. The full list. Celia's throat tightened. Her mother had hidden the truth in music, voice, mechanism, reflection, and courage. Not one proof. A system. A machine built to survive men who searched only for documents. By dawn, Greycombe House was no longer a trap. It had become a reckoning. The guests were brought from the assembly room to witness statements. It's Sir Malvern, Lord Kelling, Mr. Harrowby, and the false groom were placed under guard. The clergyman confessed he had been paid to perform ceremonies without consent. Several guests, eager to save their own names, suddenly remembered seeing far more than they had admitted at midnight. Rosalie Fenn gave her refusal again before witnesses. This time, her voice did not shake. Celia stood beside her. The music box sat open on the table. The seal, ring, miniature, ivory tiles, wax cylinder, and mirrored inscription were displayed like weapons after battle. Near sunrise, the Duke asked for silence. He stood before the room, formal now, in a way that made everyone remember his rank. Miss Celia Thornwick was brought here tonight under coercion. Her inheritance was targeted. Her name was falsely recorded as dead. Her mother's trust was stolen, concealed, and used by men who mistook guardianship for ownership. No one spoke. The Duke continued. The protective bond between the House of Thornwick and the House of Ravenscar is valid. Its paired proofs have been recovered. Celia looked at him sharply. He did not look away. However, he said, no bond, old or new, gives any man claim over a woman without her present will. The room seemed to still around that sentence. Celia's breath caught. The Duke turned to her. Before everyone, not commanding, not claiming, asking, Miss Thornwick, the law may recognise a bond between us. I will not enforce it without your consent. Sir Malvern groaned from his chair. Absurd. The Duke did not even look at him. Cecily stared at Ravenscar. Hours earlier, she had asked him to be false. Now he had the power to declare something real, and he refused to use that power unless she chose it. That was the moment everything inside her changed. Not into simple love. That would have been too quick, too small for such a night. It changed into trust, and trust was more dangerous. She stepped forward. Tabasked, when I asked you to be my false husband, I wanted a shield. I know, and when you said there was nothing false about it, I thought you meant the law. His eyes softened slightly. I meant protection. Celia swallowed. Then let the bond stand for now, not as possession, as inquiry. A whisper moved through the room. The Duke bowed his head. As you wish, and after inquiry. After inquiry, you choose again. Celia almost smiled. Good. The sun rose behind Greycombe House. Its first light touched the windows of the assembly room, the chapel, the portrait gallery, and finally the little silver swan atop the music box. For the first time all night, the tune sounded right. Weeks later, society told the story badly. Some said Celia Thornwick trapped a duke into marriage. Some said the Duke of Ravenscar carried her from a midnight auction and declared her his wife before half the county. Some said a dead woman spoke through a machine and cursed every corrupt guardian in England. That last version was closest. But the truth was better. A woman had been cornered by men who thought law belonged to whoever held the papers. Her mother had answered from beyond death without a letter, without a confession, without begging powerful men to be kind. She had built a music box that remembered, a seal hidden in a swan, names carved on ivory, a voice caught in wax, as a list revealed by a mirror, and at the centre of it all, one rule no villain had understood. The trust lives in the women who refuse. As for Celia and the Duke, they did not rush into happiness. That would have pleased the gossip too much. They spent months reopening the Thorn Crown Trust, restoring stolen estates, clearing false records, and finding the women whose names had been hidden in the music box. Rosalie Fenn became the first to testify. Mrs. and Lowe became the Trust's fiercest investigator. And Celia Thornwick, once nearly forced into marriage before dawn, became the woman no guardian in England wanted to see enter a room carrying a small silver swan. One evening, months later, Ravenscar found her in her mother's old study, listening to the music box play the corrected tune. He stood at the doorway. "Still sounds like war to me," he said. Celia smiled. "My mother would have liked that." He stepped inside. On the desk lay the old miniature. Celia as a child, her mother beside her, Ravenscar young and solemn in the background. Celia touched the edge of it. "You were there from the beginning." "Yes. And yet I had to ask you to pretend." His gaze held hers. "Sometimes truth waits for the right lie to open the door." She laughed softly, then grew quiet. "The bond can be dissolved now." "It can." "You would allow it?" "Yes." "You would not argue." "I might suffer silently in a brooding manner." "That sounds insufferable." "I have been told so." Celia looked at him for a long moment. Then she offered her hand. Not in panic, not in performance, not because a room watched. No queen, no guardian, no false groom, no pistol, no stolen music box, only choice. "I asked once for a false husband." He took her hand gently. "And I told you there was nothing false about it." "This time," she said, "I am asking what is true." Ravenscar bowed over her hand. Not as owner, not as rescuer. As the man who had waited for consent, even when law offered him possession. What is true," he said quietly, "is that I would choose you without any bond at all, and because no one forced her, because no one cornered her. Because dawn had come and gone, and left her free, Celia chose him back. Not to save an estate, not to silence gossip, not to fulfill a forgotten ceremony. But because the first real husband she ever had was the man who refused to make her one against her will. And in the restored records of the Thorn Crown Trust, beneath seals, witness marks, and legal language, Celia added one line in her own hand. "No vow taken in fear shall stand. No woman saved by law shall be owned by it. And no falsehood spoken for survival shall be judged before the truth it helped reveal."